This is John Armwood on the Armwood Opinion channel. I've taken a little bit of a sabbatical through February and March and part of January, actually. Needed to kind of take a break from YouTube. I've been doing it for a year, a little more than a year and a half. But I'm back, and I'm going to be talking today about the dangers that we're facing with the coronavirus and the rationing of healthcare, which is beginning to happen already in the United States. It's been happening for close to a month or so in Italy. The title of today's talk is Utilitarianism, the Coronavirus, and Healthcare. It was inspired in part by my fears associated with this crisis, and also by an article in the New York Times today. And it discussed the ethical choices involved in the medical profession as to who should be saved first. It was in the New York Times. It was a front page story today. Today is Sunday, the 29th of March. And it asked the question, who should be saved first? Experts offer ethical guidance. This is deeply concerning, living in America. We're in a situation where there are limited health supplies. We don't have all of the medicines that we need. We don't have the protective gear that we need. In hospitals, particularly in areas in the country which are hotspots, doctors are making decisions as to which patients will be treated and which patients will be allowed to die. The basic decision is being based upon saving those patients who have the greatest ability to survive. Why do I call this utilitarianism, the coronavirus, and healthcare? Because utilitarianism was a philosophy in Europe developed during the Enlightenment by John Stuart Mill and Jeremy Bentham in England. The philosophy basically argued that all policy should focus on the greatest good for the greatest number of people. And it had the concept in it that all people were basically the same. The problem, however, was all people have never been seen as the same or treated as the same, particularly in Western culture. And of course, we're talking about Western Europe and in the Americas. And this past week, we've been hearing a lot of people talking about the idea, should older Americans die to save the economy? I mean, this sounds crazy at first, but the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Texas, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, has called for this. Trump was talking about filling the churches back on Easter. Anybody with any common sense would know that this pandemic is not going to end in April. It's going to continue for months. So, what are you talking about? The idea of sacrificing some people for other people is a very, very dangerous roadway to go through. We do it during wartime. Sending soldiers to fight in a war, we know a certain percentage are going to die. And we've seen how that happens. The wealthy tend to avoid service. We saw this in Vietnam, where the wealthy avoided service. Donald Trump, with his made-up case of bone spurs. We've seen it with other people. We've seen how during crises or economic hard times, how certain groups of people have been sacrificed, or just out of pure greed. Take the European expansion into the Western Hemisphere, Asia, and in Africa. Think of the millions of people who died to create that wealth. The populations that were indigenous to both North and South America were largely exterminated. In Africa, you had somewhere between 6 and 12 million people die in the slave trade to the Americas. A large portion of them died in the Middle Passage, the voyage between Africa and the Americas. We have in the 19th century the Congo, when estimates of around 10 million people died in the plantations run by King Leopold II of Belgium, and close to 10 million people in the Congo died. During World War II in Europe, we saw the sacrifice of European Jewry, the Jewish population, at a time that Germany was going through economic distress. They created an enemy to attack. They were Jewish people. They exterminated Jewish people and their supporters, 6 million. We've seen it in the United States with the attacks at the beginning of the 19th century, after the slave era, on other peoples. We've seen Catholics being attacked. Donald Trump's father, Fred Trump, was part of the movement by the Ku Klux Klan and the other anti-Catholic organizations. America First, which was a pro-Nazi organization. We've seen it with Donald Trump, with his attacks on Mexicans. We've seen it with the caging of immigrants and children coming from Mexico. We've seen American ICE agents and border agents turning over buckets of water in the desert in between Mexico and the United States and the Southwest. We've seen the land stolen from the indigenous people and the Americans. We've seen the United States steal from Texas to California from Mexico. This was a utilitarianism, but those people were not considered people. That's the problem with the philosophy. And do you want people who voted for Donald Trump to make decisions having to do with your life, when he has called people of African descent and Africans people that come from S-hole countries? We used to say in school as kids, sugar, honey, iced tea countries, who said that Mexicans were nothing but thugs and thieves when he was running for president? Do you want people who voted for Donald Trump making decisions about your life? Now, granted, according to Nate Silver, who is considered to be the most sophisticated pollster and analyst of politics in the United States, Trump won with a majority of people who were lesser educated. And clearly, doctors and nurses are better educated than the average American. But still, many of them supported Trump. I don't want a Trump supporter making a decision about my life. We know how he feels about black people. We know how he feels about Hispanic people. We've heard him talk about this virus as the Chinese disease and defend that. Do you think that a Trump supporter who believes what Trump says would make a choice to save a Chinese person or Hispanic person or a black person over an equally situated white person? I don't think so. I don't think so. I know what it's like to be in a hospital and to be operated upon and then neglected by a doctor who did not see me as being an equal human being. Right at Wellstar Hospital in Kennesaw, Georgia. The doctor's name was Nicholas Simbas. Yes, I am naming him at Wellstar. When I had cancer surgery. And they sent me from the hospital without painkillers. And then when I called them on it afterwards, they wrote a letter lying, saying that they had sent a prescription to the pharmacy. Of course, it was closed, but the pharmacy for a controlled substance, an opioid. And they said they had faxed it over, which of course is illegal. I have the letter saying it. They will lie. They will do anything. This is a great danger. I am very scared about this crisis because I don't think that healthcare will be distributed equally. So those of you of goodwill, whatever your ethnic or racial background is, if you work in the hospital industry, be on the lookout for this. This is going to happen. There's no chance that it's not happened. It is as American as apple pie, and not just American. People do this around the world. I want you to call it out. This is a time where we need courage. If you see something going on that is immoral, that is not right, if you see favoritism, speak out. We need to hear from you. That's the kind of sacrifice we need right now. People will cover up, people will lie. I know of an institution right now that had people who had coronavirus and they didn't tell other people about it. People who are greedy will do things like this. People who lack morals, ethical values will do this kind of behavior. So we must stand up for what is right. We must resist this kind of behavior. We must resist the treating of people unfairly. Law professor, the late Derek Bell, wrote about this, and he called this kind of utilitarianism that I'm talking about involuntary sacrifice. When the majority is willing to sacrifice the rights of the minority for its own benefit. It has always happened in America. It's happening now. That's why we have a Black Lives Matter movement, because America has acted as if black lives don't matter throughout its history up until today. So we must be vigilant, we must be aware, and we must remember that resistance is not futile. And to add some humor, as I like to do, if Locutus can resist, so can we all. Star Trek, folks. I always compare Trump to the Borg. We must fight this evil. Hit the like button if you like this video. Share this video. Put your comments down below. That helps the channel grow. And I will see you the next video. Resistance is not futile.